Good morning, greetings, and welcome to Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. This morning we have a special guest with us. We have with us Ms. Carolyn Fawkes and Mr. Terrell Alexandre from the election system of the Virgin Islands. Welcome, Ms. Fawkes and Mr. Alexandre.
Good morning, and we're pleased to be on your show with you this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
Good morning, you're most welcome. And Ms. Fawkes, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little of what you do at the election systems?
Again, I'm the supervisor of elections. I handle the day-to-day operations of the elections office on behalf of the board. Our day-to-day activities include registration of voters, transfer of voters, and the biggest thing is preparation for election. And as you all are aware, we're right now in the 2020 election cycle, prepare for a primary election, general election, and conducting of early voting and absentee ballot voting.
Thank you. And Mr. Alexandre, tell us what you do at the election system of the Virgin Islands. If you would lean in a little bit more so we could see you on the camera. More than yeah, perfect. Thank you. A little bit better, yes.
Okay, good morning. Again, I'm the acting deputy supervisor. I assist Ms. Fox with the day-to-day operations on behalf of the board for in the St. Croix district.
Great, thank you. And so we have a unique situation taking place in the world today with this pandemic of COVID-19. And as we know, we're moving into the election season all across the country. And this pandemic is a major concern for us in the Virgin Islands, as well as every other state and every municipality that may be holding elections this year, because we want people to be safe. We don't want people to contract the virus. And we know from historical data that oftentimes it's the older population that comes out in greater numbers to vote, and older people are most vulnerable to the virus. And so on May 11th, 2020, the governor signed Act 8294 into law. This act seeks to provide qualified electors to vote by absentee ballot in the 2020 elections to ensure that electors are not disenfranchised by the COVID-19 pandemic. Can one of you, either Ms. Fawkes or Mr. Alexandre, tell us what else this act does for us?
So what the act does is it gives every voter the opportunity to apply for absentee ballot. It could either be mailed to their home, or they can come in the office, pick it up, take it home, fill it out, and mail it back to us, or bring it in the office. The law, as written in the past, you have to have 9 reasons why you need to vote absentee. So whether you're military, whether you're medical, whether you're a student in college, etc., etc. So you have to provide us a reason for voting absentee. So that has been the trend nationwide, is to provide absentee ballot to anyone that desires it at this time. And they can vote from the comfort of their homes or wherever they choose. And so, along with the COVID pandemic, they have stressed that we try to encourage the elder population to use that method of voting.
Great. And for clarity then, for people who are at home and don't want to come out, how do they register for absentee ballot voting? Because that's been a big question that we've been getting.
Okay, well, the application is also online and it's fillable online. I know some of the elders may not have computer access, so if they have family members or friends or something that can assist them, that's one option. They also can send someone to the office to pick up the application ballot. Over there, you can fill it application, or they can fill it out for them and then complete it, sign it, and we will mail the ballot to their homes. They fill it out and the person could drop it back in the mail. The mail is free, it's bulk mail, so we pay the cost to and fro, similarly to what we do for folks off island. So it's just the same operations available to on island that you can get it. So it's an application process, and the application, like I said, is very self-explanatory, and you can check off all elections. So once you fill it out for the primary election, you don't have to do it again for the general, nor if there's a runoff. You automatically get all the ballots absentee from the primary forward for this election cycle.
And you also have the option of calling the office and speaking with one of the election assistants, and they will fill out the application for you while on the phone. So you have that option if you don't have anybody to come into the office to fill it out.
Perfect. And how soon can they start calling in to get these absentee ballots or filling them out online?
right away. The deadline to request an absentee application is July 24th. We don't, we encourage individuals to have these applications submitted beforehand, so we can promptly mail out those ballots on July 24th to the electors. So the application, as of right now, you can call right now to the office and have that application filled out.
Okay, so if they want to get an absentee ballot, and let's say they're not going to vote in the primary, is July 24th still the deadline to acquire or to apply for this absentee ballot?
No. They would have a separate date when we could start to receive it. I believe that date is in September for the general election absentee ballots. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. I'll get that before we get off. But it's I think it's September 13th where you can request a absentee ballot for the general election. But the July 24th date is for specifically the primary election, which is scheduled for August 1st.
Okay, perfect. And historically, voters prefer to vote in person.
Yeah,
How do you
that's
anticipate the absentee voting provision benefiting voters in this election? Please explain also the process for voters to vote by mail using the absentee ballots.
Can you repeat the question again? You broke up a bit.
Okay, yeah. So there are two parts of the question. First of all, how do you anticipate the absentee voting provision benefiting voters in this election? And also then explain the process for voters to vote by mail using the absentee ballots. Like, when do they have to mail in those absentee ballots? What's the deadline for getting in those absentee ballots?
Okay. So to answer your question, your first question in regards to the absentee ballot, repeat the question one more time for me, please.
So how do you anticipate the absentee voting provision benefiting voters in this election? And then also explain the process for voters to vote by mail in those absentee ballots. Like, for instance, when do they have to get in those absentee ballots by mail? What's the deadline for that submission of their vote?
So to get in, the deadline for the absentee ballot is the 24th. Thus far, we have in the St. Croix district, the last number I received from Ms. Felix, who handles absentee, it was roughly less than 50. Typically, individuals prefer to come out to vote. We also currently have early voting going on right now as we speak. That's scheduled July 6th to the 26th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There are provisions set up for individuals who want to come in and actually do in-person voting. And we have situations where I may come into the office and vote, but my parents, I can request the absentee ballot, and Ms. Felix would make the provisions where she can get that person the absentee ballot. So the individuals do have the option of that. So we just like to remind individuals that you can still early vote as well. With requesting the absentee, you just have to complete the application. Ms. Fawkes previously stated the ways you can request an absentee ballot, but I can repeat it again. You can complete it online and mail it to us. You can call us on the phone. Our numbers here in St. Croix is 773-1021. In the St. Thomas office is 774-3107. Or you can send someone to the office to complete the application for you. The absentee ballot itself is a straightforward to complete it. It comes in several envelopes, so it's multiple layered. So it comes in a big envelope that we mail out with your address on it. But inside of that envelope, there's a self-sealed envelope that you would drop into the mail when you complete your ballot. But inside of that envelope, there's the envelope that contains the absentee ballot itself. And there's also an affidavit that the elector must complete to send it back. And it's a straightforward, it's basic asking questions like how long you registered your name, and you have to prove that your U.S. citizenship, and you have to sign off on that affidavit. If somebody assists you as well, that person also have to sign off on that affidavit. We also like to remind individuals, especially if you have a parent, you can only help assist one parent. You can't assist two parents in an election cycle. So I can't assist my mom and turn around and assist my dad. Somebody has to assist the parent when they're voting. You're only allowed to assist one elector in a given election period.
Excellent. And then once those absentee ballots are received, how long does it take for those to be counted into the general vote? Because I've often wondered that myself. You know, people vote by absentee ballot. It may get in just a couple of weeks or a week before the general election. Is that counted into the final count, or does that end up counting into the final count sometimes subsequent to elections? How does that work? Are those votes really counted?
So yes, the absentee votes are counted, but as you stated, it's a different process. So they do not begin counting the absentee ballots until after the election night. So the board going to set up a schedule of which day and time they will count. Usually they'll start the day after elections, and then they'll subsequently select other dates, because you have up to 10 days after the election to receive absentee ballot by 5 p.m. So we check the post office, which will be August 11th. At 5 p.m., the staff will check, bring in whatever is in the post office at that time, bring it into the board, it's stamped and checked. And then the board goes through the process, like he stated, of checking everything. They check the affidavit, we provide them a roster, all the registered voter. So they make sure that person is registered before they do anything. And then they'll go to opening it, and they separate it in separate bins. They do not know who the ballot came from, because somebody has deal with just taking it out, taking it out the envelope, dropping the envelopes in a bin, dropping the ballots in a bin, dropping the affidavits in a bin. And so they do that in stacks of 25. And so again, that's why we've been encouraging folks to early vote, because early vote is the first votes that are counted at 7:05. And there were also questions of why we don't count the early vote daily or at the end of the period, because you don't want to influence anyone. You don't want folks to know the results before it's ready on election day. So the law is very specific. Early voting is counted after the election poll closes at 7 p.m. So they'll start with that results first. They put it into the machine and they get the results. And as the polling place results come in, jump drives, they'll factor those in. And the next day is when they do absentee, and then they wait maybe every 3 days, they'll do that process and count. And so the results of the election is not official until August 11th, when the absentee process is completed.
Okay, great. That makes good sense, because I was wondering how that worked, and if you just all of a sudden got all of these absentee ballots together and counted them sometime after, but you do sort of like a rolling counting of them as you go along, and then there's not a whole huge amount left on the day after elections. Is that my understanding?
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct.
Great. And now voting has already begun. I assume that's going well. We don't want to know any numbers or anything, but are you seeing that people are already responding to that early voting?
Well, yes, we have numbers, so we could give you numbers. So yesterday we kicked off the early voting process, and we're always excited about the process. Again, the staff, they're very involved. We do internal competition among our islands. So everybody's excited about the process. And so we started yesterday. St. Croix had 65 voters that cast their vote. St. Thomas had 55 voters that cast their vote, and St. John had 6. And so in St. Thomas, we're also excited because now was the first time we out of the office. So they're using Charlotte Amalia Sprung Shelter. So the staff had to set up down there with 2 computers. Only the election staff can tag and check in voters. So we can't use poll workers for this process. So the staff, I have a staff of 4 in each of the island district. They check in the voters, and then we have poll workers that we hire to go through the other process. So we have judges, we have clerks, we have facilitator and monitors. So we do have in St. Thomas, we hired about 10 persons. Here in St. Croix, we hired about 6. And in St. John, we hired 4. And so board members are also welcome. They come by, they observe the process, they check and also see how everything is going. But this process is run by the Supervisor of Elections office. We also invite the public to look at the process. So in the morning, we have a seal we put on the night before. It's logged in a book. It's checked by the voting technician and the judge. And when we come in the next morning, we also check to make sure the same seal is there, the number is correct, and the count that we left the machines with are correct. In our 2 offices, we have security systems on the office. And there were some concerns about going off-site, but we do have security in place. We hire security to monitor our ballots overnight, and we have been doing that for years. So this is not a new process. So we do have security that we employ just to deal with the election cycle. We have VIPD here, but we hire private security companies for this process.
Great. And with this pandemic still abounding and even increasing here in the Virgin Islands, what protocols have been put into place to protect the general public, in particular our most vulnerable population?
Okay, we have a series of stuff that we have set up to protect both the public and our staff. So we'll start with early vote, and it probably be a similar process for election day. So before you can even enter into the polling place or our office, an individual has to wash their hand or sanitize it. And then after they complete that process, the door is open for that individual. But before that individual can come into the polling place or our office, that individual's temperature has to be checked. Anything over 100.4, and we've been working with the Department of Health, who've given us guidance and procedures that we can follow. That individual, if the temperature is over 100.4, that individual is given a chance to cool down. And in most cases, we've seen in the past, from today and yesterday, the individual temperature typically drops. The temperature is pretty high from being in the sun. So once they relax and they cool down, we allow them in. If someone's temperature does not drop, we're going to issue them an absentee ballot. That individual will have to call us here in the office, or if it's an election day, to complete the application, and an absentee ballot will be issued to them. So that way we ensure that no one is disenfranchised and not voting. And we'd also recommend that person do get in contact with the Department of Health to be tested. Also, we have set up social distancing. Everything is marked for 6 feet. We have a tent outside where we're only allowing no more than 4 individuals in our office space. It's been working fine for the past couple of days, and we don't foresee any issues. We also have different in the offices and in the polling places. We do have both hand sanitizer stations throughout the building that the voter is encouraged to sanitize the hand throughout the process. We're also giving each voter a pen for themselves. Once that voter votes with that pen is for that voter. If that voter leaves that pen behind, we're going to discard that pen. We're also, after every voter votes, we've been wiping down the machines, wiping down the voting booths to ensure that there is no cross-contamination. And everything is a lot of sanitizing. And an individual, the most important, which I missed when I started, an individual must wear the mask to come in. No mask, no service. So if you choose not to wear your mask, you will also be issued a absentee ballot, and you'll have to be called. So we're encouraging individuals, so when they come to vote, to please wear your mask and follow the guidelines that we have set. Like Ms. Fawkes stated earlier, early voting has been going well. It's just the numbers are slow, but this is usually a slow election cycle. So, but we'll continue to monitor it, and we have plenty of supplies on hand to ensure that everybody votes safely, to protect both the voting public and our staff.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned earlier, the early voting just started on July 6th.
Correct.
So it's still pretty early on, and we don't expect the numbers to be too high right now, but I'm glad that people are taking advantage of that to keep the numbers down at the polling places on the election day itself. So that's really wonderful. All over the country, AARP is very concerned about this pandemic and how it affects our older population, especially because we do most of our work for the 50-plus population across the country. And so as director of AARP in the Virgin Islands, I sent a letter on behalf of all of AARP to the Board of Elections, asking for expanded use of absentee ballots. And so we were very, very happy that the board accepted our letter, that it was received well, and that as a result of this, we'd have now this Act number 8294, expanding the use of absentee ballots. So again, we thank the Board of Elections, and we thank you, Fawkes, and you, Mr. Alexandre, for making this all work out. And many people have been asking us, like I said, all kinds of questions about how does this all work? How do they get absentee ballots? People who have never voted by absentee ballot before. So I'm glad we had this conversation today to make the people more aware. And we will be engaging in more education in partnership with you to get that word out to people. So looks forward to that. Do you have any ideas yet as to how this education will look? And of course, we will help to support you along the way with all that education and getting the word out. But what plans do you all have for educating the public about the use of absentee ballots, especially during this pandemic?
So we've been doing some press releases, but we're working on some PSA. I should have the final version today. They had a little slippage. It was due yesterday because we do PSA. So we employ a strategic company, a media company, to prepare a little PSA that will be run on the radio. What I would like to say is it was AARP and the Department of Health partner with us. We do have a flyer out with all information about social distancing and encouraging folks to use the absentee ballot process and letting them know that it's safe, it's secure, it's transparent, and absentee has been a part of the process for numerous years, but only used by a selected number of folks. So the educational process will be, I think, a lot more radio, conversations like this on the media, TV, on radio, PSAs, and, maybe one of the weekends just doing campaigns, just getting out there and, having an educational forum, just talking about absentee and how easy it is, easy, accessible, and it's safe and secure because, like you say, a lot of the states have been doing it for years. Oregon has been doing all absentee for 20 years. So absentee voting works. Again, it's safe, it's efficient, and it's not that anybody can vote. We are verify the voter when that application comes in and that ballot comes in. So the days of when you hear, voters voting and they have died, those days are gone because of the system that we have. Every voter, every absentee ballot is checked against a voter's list. And if the voter is not registered, the ballot do not count. They're set aside and they're kept for 2 years with a note on them stating that the ballot is unacceptable because the person is not a registered voter. So the board makes annotation on all the applications that come in and verify against our database.
Great. And I know it's still very, very early in this whole process, but based on what you're seeing so far, what you may be hearing in your offices, what you may be hearing on the streets, among your family, friends, all over the place, how do you think the elections are going to take this year as far as numbers of people? Do you think we'll have pretty much on par with previous years, or more or less?
I think this year seems to be a little bit competitive. So I think we will see a little bit more, but the primary is always slow. Again, you still have that concern about which the primary is or isn't. So I think you'll see more for the general election. So you have, at least 6 of the incumbents running here, and in St. Thomas you have similar. So you're going to have a few, new persons challenging or running to get into the party primary to be the 7th candidate or whatever number, the 7 candidates, with S. So I think the primary is that it might be a little slow for some, but I think it's very competitive. And so that's the same thing. We encourage every voice is your vote and every vote is your voice, because one vote do make a difference. And so if you decide to stay home and the person that you really want didn't get in because that one vote made a difference. So we're encouraging all to come out and vote. With us, every election is important. Every election is important. From the time I was 18 years old, I have voted, whether I'm the island or not. And I've been in the military deployed, and I vote every election year. I vote absentee, so I know the process works and I trust it. I was in Guantanamo Bay when they had in 2012, and they sent me 5 different ballots, and I voted on all of them. So, we in the military, we take it seriously. We're getting a lot of absentee from overseas. And with technology, the military can vote via email, where they waive their rights and they vote via email. They could fax it back to us. So they got other options to the military. But historically, St. Thomas has always had more absentee applications for a lot more people that are transit or goes away for medical, or, when we had the whole closure of tests, we had an uptake of absentee in St. Croix. When we had the hurricanes, we had an uptake of absentee in the territory because a lot of people was sent off for whether medical or other care and issues and housing, loss of homes, etc. So absentee has been a process, and is just that we have to educate the folks that have not participated. But culturally, we know that a lot of Virgin Islanders like to go out on election day. And so what you're doing is encouraging the elders especially to take advantage of this process. Because as you stated in the beginning, we have more elders, 45 and older, that participate in this process than the young people. And so we want to make sure the safety, health, and care is paramount to us. So we're encouraging them to use early voting as an option, because you could come in here and just like if you go shopping by yourself, you get in and get out. There's only 4. You come to the time of the day that's not peak, instead of waiting until election day, or absentee. So those will be the 2 that we'll try to promote, because like I said, we still have folks that want to participate in the process and they don't want to do it at home. We also have the disabled community, and I know you have some of those persons in your organization, and we cater to them also. Our machine is disabled ready for hearing, visual impaired, or hearing loss, or mobility with your body part, limbs, hands, or feet. Their machines are accessible to them. So we want to make sure they also is included, whether they want to do early voting or absentee or election day.
Excellent. And you, Ms. Fawkes and Mr. Alexandre, both of you have great experience in the election system of the Virgin Islands, and I'm sure that you all, to a great extent, monitor what's going on in the mainland and monitor the systems and what new technology can be brought in here and how it's working nationally and how it's working locally, et cetera. In most recent times, we've been hearing a lot of concern about tampering with elections all across the United States in this upcoming election. Can you all give us any kind of insight? What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? How safe is the whole election system? What can we look forward to this upcoming election? Do you think that there can be tampering with it locally, nationally? Just your general thoughts about the safety of it, both locally and nationally.
Locally here, so we'll give you a brief. None of our equipment is connected via the internet, so that solves that issue of it being tampered with. Unless the only way we can tamper with a machine, you'll have to physically destroy the machine here locally, and we have never had that experience, and we're hoping to never see that happen locally. Since it's not connected to the internet, you can't go in and tamper it, and then it's a fail-safe system, especially with DS200. You have to scan a physical ballot into the machine, and then there's a thumb drive that reads the ballot, so it actually takes a copy of each. Scans a copy of each ballot that goes through the machine, and then the ballot drops in a blue bin at the bottom. So if there is anything that happens that we change, we can always go back and do a recount utilizing those same paper ballots in regards to the tampering. So nothing of ours are connected to the internet. So the voters locally should feel safe when you go to cast a ballot, and we are taking steps to ensure that doesn't happen here locally.
Well, coming from my background, I will just add a little bit to what he said. 32 years in the military. So we big at cybersecurity and also security measures. And then there are some security measures that are non-visible to you, the public, that we can discuss with you, the public. And like he stated, the machines are not connected to the internet, and they never will be. In the States, they are connected. Some of the same type machines are connected because they spread out to various polling places and they want to talk to each other. Our database is monitored monthly by our organization in the States for cybersecurity. And so we get a monthly report, us and BIT, to know what's going on with our database. So that's the only 2 things we have. For us, again, we are a little less risky because we do not have we do not vote for the president. So a lot of the hacking with the database and whatnot in the States was mostly presidential concern. But our database is checked, or like I mentioned before, only the workers that are sworn in elections have access to the live database. So even when we send the e-poll book out to the poll book on election day, they do not have the live data. They have the files that they need just to check a person, whether they're voting, issue a ballot, etc. So it's very secure. And like I said, some of the security processes we have in place cannot be discussed publicly, but there are a lot of security measures in place.
Excellent.
Even in our storage room, the machines are tracked from the time they leave here. They are placed in the building, they're secured the night before, they're tracked even to when they return here, and the transportation company. And
Great.
so we're very, very modern with technology in that way.
Great. We thank you both so much for this interview today. We have to wrap up right now because we're out of time. So we look forward to learning from you more in the future and also working with you to get this education out to the public here in the Virgin Islands. So again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.